Hello and welcome to another edition to Atlanta News First Investigates Behind the Investigation. I'm investigative reporter Andy Perotti. Joining me now is my colleague, investigative reporter Rachel Polansky. How you doing?
Hi, Andy. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So your investigation this week was really fascinating, and it reminded me of driving down the road and you see signs for people trying to sell their ugly homes, maybe their cars. But your investigation takes another look at something that people are trying to sell on using signs, driving through neighborhoods, medical supplies. Bring us up to speed.
Right, yeah, so everyone has seen these signs, cash for home, cash for gold. But what about cash for diabetic strips? These are signs that are popping up all over Metro Atlanta. And I actually talked with the guy behind the signs. And he tells me this is a lucrative business that really is booming. And get this, it's completely legal. So let's take a look at the story.
Sounds good.
Here's an unusual offer, popping up on hundreds of signs across Metro Atlanta.
Suburbs and within the perimeter. I've done over 500 signs within the past 6 months.
Meet the man behind the signs, Ray Donovan, who tells us there's a booming underground economy for diabetic test strips.
This is my full-time job.
While each disposable piece of plastic may look insignificant, diabetic test strips provide an essential role in helping the 37 million Americans with diabetes monitor their blood sugar daily. Turns out, they're also a money-making venture.
It's diabetics that have an extra amount of test strips, pumps, Dexcom 6s. They have extra diabetic testing supplies. I meet up with them, I evaluate them, I check the expiration, I check the quality of them, and then I buy it off them.
Usually the buyers are uninsured and unable to pay retail prices, while the sellers are insured with a surplus of product. At least that was the case for diabetic Laura Miller, who sold hundreds of dollars worth of diabetic supplies to Donovan.
What happened was I had switched insurance, and all of a sudden in a month and a half I had like 4 different test meters and all the test strips and the lancets and everything like coming at me every other day in the mail.
A lot of stuff.
Miller wanted to make it clear that she's not rationing insulin and she's not selling supplies for the money. In fact, she only took $100 from Donovan, even though her supplies were worth triple that amount.
I told him nothing over that, no matter what.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I did it because I had an abundant amount and I didn't want them to go to waste.
I got your text messages about your supplies and equipment, and I'm really interested in the test strips. And the
While it is legal to resell unused diabetic test strips, the practice has raised concerns from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, who said using pre-owned test strips may potentially cause infection or lead to inaccurate test results, which can cause serious harm, including death. Noonan Dr. Cecil Bennett also warns against the practice.
The concern is, of course, for my patient's health. If we're using strips that are inaccurate, basically we cannot manage that patient properly, and we may be undertreating them or overtreating them, which leads to further complications.
Among those complications, hyperglycemia, which happens when blood sugar levels are too high, and hypoglycemia, which sets in when blood sugar levels are too low.
And both could be medical emergencies.
Back on the street, I shared Dr. Bennett's concerns with Donovan, who says he takes precautions to ensure the products he's buying are legitimate, including only buying diabetic supplies that are sealed and within the expiration date. If someone would have approached you with this pack, what would catch your eye about this?
That's not sealed.
So you wouldn't buy that?
Oh, definitely not.
Still, Dr. Bennett says buying pre-owned supplies is a gamble.
I'm surprised that it's legal.
That's not worth the payout for diabetics.
I really appreciate you calling us in, and I'll see you Thursday at 11.
I have no confidence in someone outside of the medical profession making a judgment as to whether or not these strips are good or not good.
Rachel, what a fascinating investigation. And ever since I first watched your story, I can't help but see these signs everywhere.
I know, they really are everywhere. Donovan told me that he put up something like 500 of them in the past 6 months. And he told me too, which I thought was really interesting. I'm like, how many calls do you get from these things a day? And he said at the beginning it was somewhere around 3 to 5, but now he gets 20 to 25 calls a day.
A day. And he quit his previous job to do this full time?
Yeah, this is full time. He wouldn't tell me how much he makes a month, but he said it's enough to pay the bills.
You got to feel for the people that can't afford some of these supplies. I mean, if you don't have insurance and you're diabetic, you got to go somewhere if you can't afford it, and this guy's supplying a service.
Right, exactly. And that's where, it can be a little controversial because you don't know where these products are coming from. Even though he says that he takes the precautions to make sure that they're sealed, not expired, there have been reports of counterfeit strips. And you just don't know. Somebody could alter them, do something to them, and then reseal it. So obviously doctors have concerns, obviously the FDA has concerns, but if you're a person that has diabetes and can't afford the product, this might be your only option, which is really sad, but an unfortunate reality for a lot of people.
I want to talk to you a little bit more about Ray, the broker, this guy buying and selling these supplies. How did you convince him to talk to you? I mean, you had really great access. He seemed very unbothered about showing you his process.
Right. I was quite surprised about that myself. I literally saw his sign and called the number and left him a voicemail, and he called me back and we just had a conversation, and I asked him if he'd want to do an interview. He said sure. He came to the station and we actually talked outside, and then I kind of just kept asking him for more and more, and he kept saying yes and yes. I said, oh, can we take a look at the supplies? He said, sure. I said, can we go along with you as you go hang up these signs? He said, sure. Wow. I said, can we go to a meetup when you meet up with your buyers or sellers? And for that part, it took a little bit of convincing because he had to talk to them and see if they wanted to be on camera. But luckily, Laura Miller, who you heard from, was very interested, and she said she does this to help people. She's not doing this for the money, so she was willing to share her story as well. So I kind of lucked out with just having people that were interested in being on TV and sharing their stories.
What's been the reaction so far from both people that think this is amazing and then maybe some people that are concerned? What kind of reaction are you getting?
Right, it's totally mixed. When I was telling this to Dr. Bennett out at Noonan, he was shocked that this was even legal. And kind of the loophole in the law right now is that you're not allowed to resell insulin, but you can resell the testing supplies. So that's kind of how they're able to get around it. But yeah, the people who are buying and selling obviously think this is a lucrative business and they're having success with it, and they say they're doing a service. There are 37 million Americans with diabetes, and a lot of people are uninsured. But then again, those on the other side, the FDA, the medical professionals, are always concerned about their patient's safety, and there are some safety risks with that. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if you can give some folks some tips. Say this is what they have to do to afford to get these supplies. Are there any tips, any suggestions that you learned that could potentially help them to make sure that they're buying legit equipment?
Right. I would say almost interview the person that you're buying it from. Make sure they know about the field and make sure they know about the supplies they're selling. Make sure that the supplies are within the expiration date. You can look right on the packaging. And similarly, make sure that it hasn't been resealed. Make sure that it is clearly a package that hasn't been opened before. And if it has been resealed, and even if they say it's safe, do not buy that. You only want a product that is within expiration date and sealed. Because as you heard from the doctor, if these products are not within that expiration date,
they may
could
not
be
work.
getting you could be getting the wrong result, and then you can give yourself more insulin and get hyperglycemia, or too little insulin and get hypoglycemia. So there are some serious health risks if you're not getting the correct readings from those test strips.
Well, thank you so much for doing this investigation. Like you said, there are a lot of people that have to get these supplies, and so you're telling us the do's and the don'ts and the buyer beware and all the things in between, and I think it's really, really useful information. So thanks again, Rachel. We really appreciate it.
Of course, thank you.
And we'll see you next time on another behind-the-scenes investigation for Atlanta News First.